Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marvel-ous Movie Mondays. I'm the one with the mug of something this week because I am very tired, but Kelsey is still on Ireland time. Kelsey, welcome back. They've seen you every Monday, but I have not seen you every Monday because we pre-taped the last several episodes. So, how you doing, Kelsey? How's Ireland? Tell us.
Oh, I'm doing great, Jill. Ireland was great. It's a really beautiful
Wow,
country.
great with
Everyone
two
was
syllables. That's
so
amazing.
nice there.
Hmm.
Um, because I said great.
Yeah,
Is that what you mean?
yeah,
It
you're fine.
it it's a country that deserves a two-syllable great. It
Oh
was
yeah,
really, really awesome. And I saw so many beautiful things and went to so many cool museums and saw castles and there's like it's just beautiful there and
oh,
I can't wait to go back. And I had more potatoes than I can absolutely like
that's
even
good.
like I'm done with potatoes I think for the next year. I
I was
think
gonna say if there's a food to like get a lot of though, if potatoes isn't a bad one, like it could have
yeah,
been like
yeah. It's just like
haggis.
I feel like in America like we just like, oh yeah, we associate Ireland with potatoes and we think it's like cute and like an aesthetic. Like no, like they love the potato there.
Wow,
I went to a restaurant and on their napkins, like their logo for the restaurant was like the simple spud reimagined or something like that. And I was like,
that's amazing.
I'm a simple spud that's been reimagined. I love that. It made me feel hopeful. I
Yeah.
don't know. But it was
Well,
great.
yeah, we're back to talk about Marvel, and we actually have Marvel stuff to talk about. We have two Marvel episodes of What If, which we'll get into in a second. But news-wise, I mean, I don't know if the Ireland stuff was your news or if you have other news, but I think the big news this week was the Eternals trailer.
Mhm.
Have you seen it yet, Kels?
Oh, yeah, baby.
Oh
I
yeah.
watched it as soon as you sent it to me.
Yep, yep. Because I saw it like as soon as because they dropped it in like the middle of the night, at least where I am. So maybe it was someone in Ireland who dropped it because they were like it was like 4 a.m. here, and I was up because I'm a night owl. So I was like, all right, I sent it to you. I was like, all right, here it goes.
That's
Um,
interesting because
yeah,
I'm thinking like maybe because I'm thinking that they probably whoever's dropping it was dropping it on California time. So maybe they were
yeah,
waiting around for midnight California time. I don't know.
yeah. Maybe it was midnight, and it just oh yeah, maybe yeah, maybe. Anyway, looked really really good. I think this is
Mhm.
a better understanding of the tone and like visual aesthetic of the movie because the first one was just kind of like all right, like we're getting a lot of like big wide shots, but this was more like the intimate character moments and like we got a little bit more of the humor because Chloe Zhao's movies, like the humor is there, but it's more of like just regular people talking and sometimes they say things that are like endearingly funny, but it's not like there are no jokes written in. But
Mhm.
this one, it's interesting because you have the Marvel formula of like having jokes written in. So I thought it was interesting. I loved how they finally put her name on the trailer
Mhm.
because that's the one thing I had a complaint about last time, and they watched
Absolutely.
this show. So thank you, Kevin Feige. Thanks for watching because you heard me and
They took our notes.
you put Chloe Zhao's name on the trailer. But what do you think, Kels?
Well, I liked how it answered a lot of questions that I feel like a lot of people walked away with like the first kind of like teaser trailer where it was like, okay, you've been sitting back and watching the universe just kind of fall apart and you're not stepping in until right now. So we kind
Hmm.
of learned a little bit more about the main antagonists in these films, which are called, I think, like I was hearing the word demons.
Yeah,
I'm sure like there's a
I
different
don't know.
word or it's a word very close to that, but because of the snap that brought half the population and all living things back, it kind of opened up this or maybe they're called celestials. I'm not sure. It's like
Well, we'll find out
something
in
like
a few
that.
months. Yeah,
It kind of like opened up this opportunity. There's like I guess cracks in the universe now where these beings that, were tormenting the earth, I think like 7,000 or 70,000 something thousand years ago,
mm,
are reemerging. And now the Eternals swore that they would never intervene with like the human race of the universe again unless these beings came back. And now that
yeah,
they're coming back, this is why we're getting the Eternals back. So I liked how someone was like, okay, so you just saw like Thanos snap away half the population and like all this like bad shit go down and you haven't intervened until now.
right.
And I like how they kind of, really
Yeah.
spelled it out for us
That's
why.
gonna be that's gonna be one of the toughest things like going forward is if you're doing any superheroes that are new that were around and had powers during the Thanos stuff, you gotta explain why we didn't see them. Or
Right.
you can just say, oh, he was like with Howard the Duck. You know, he was there. It's just you didn't see him. He was in the background
Right.
because there are a
Yeah.
lot of warriors and stuff that you didn't see. But I agree. Like that's an interesting question. The cast has me excited. Like I like to see a little bit more of like Richard Madden's stuff in this trailer because he's amazing. And
Mhm.
yeah, I have really really high hopes now, even more than I did before.
Yeah,
Um,
my only concern about this though, and I really just thought of this as we were talking about it, was it's giving me a lot of like, I want to say like early Thor movie and like
okay.
kind of Doctor Strange-esque aesthetics and like
Yep.
feelings. And I just like, I'm afraid that we're all gonna do to this movie what we did to like Thor the Dark World and like Doctor Strange, where we're not gonna appreciate it as much because it is so different and it does
Mm-hmm.
have like a very different vibe
Yeah.
to it. And you know, these all these heroes have different powers and different styles. So I'm like, I hope that we all like respect this movie for what it is, and hopefully like we're not going into it with the like going in on the wrong foot, you know. I want
Yeah.
everyone to, as a fandom, for us to just be like open-minded, because I think it's important that, you know, Marvel does different things and we
Mm-hmm.
don't
Oh
keep
yeah.
putting out like the same formulaic, you know, 3-act movies that we always do. You know what
And
I'm
I think
saying? So,
aside from the big Avengers movies that almost like have a formula because you need it with so many characters, I feel like some of the newer movies, as good as they are, sometimes they feel formulaic, especially at
mhm.
the ends. You know, like I think the weakest part of like Black Panther is the end because it's just kind of your generic fight sequence. Like it's not anything interesting. So like
Sure.
I think there are movies like that that need some. There needs to be some sort of new life breathed into these movies, and we love these movies. But I do agree. Like I think we need to find new ways to make it even more innovative, and that's why I mean DC talk. But I love the Suicide Squad that just came out because it was like James Gunn being like, so like I did the family thing with Guardians, but now I have an R-rated budget and I want to like tear some heads off also, and
Mhm.
you know have John Cena screaming the F word while in tidy whities, and I'm like that's like you know that's I think the direction superhero films need to go in is like just saying, hey, like let's do something fucking different, and if it misses, at least we tried and made something interesting. So, speaking of interesting and different, let's talk about What If, because unless you have other news, Kels, do you have?
No, no, that
Okay,
was
yeah,
it. I just
I was
wanted to
gonna
talk about
say,
the
yeah,
trailer.
and potatoes. So
Yeah.
we get two episodes. We're gonna talk about both, and we're not gonna do it the traditional way where we kind of break down scene by scene by scene, because a lot
Mhm.
of these scenes are scenes we've seen already, just recontextualized with other characters in different roles. And you know, it's basically that the premise is what's is in the title. You know, it's like that's
Mhm.
what it is about, and that's kind of what it is. We'll just kind of talk about like the animation, the voice acting, and like the actual stories, and whether we thought they were interesting takes. Whether we'd like to see more of this if this were to expand, because I think
Yeah.
part of the series could be like, hey, we're gonna do all these little stories, and then maybe if one really takes well, let's go full steam ahead and make its own mini series. Because I like the animation. I think they should stick with animation. If they do like a Captain Carter series or a T'Challa, well, they can't do a T'Challa Star Lord series, but those are the two episodes we're talking about. So, Kels, let's start with what if Captain Carter were the first Avenger? I'm assuming you have a little synopsis for us.
I do. I do have a
Yay.
little synopsis. It's kind of weak. It's not one of my better synopsis,
Well, the
but
synopsis is also the title of the episode, but
yeah,
give it to
exactly.
us.
So I'm essentially just rewording the title here.
Right.
So due to a change in events, Peggy Carter takes the super soldier serum and becomes Captain Carter.
Nice.
So what
There it
I
is.
did, Dill, instead of obviously a traditional scene by scene breakdown, is I just kind of like starred like key differences throughout the movie as
Yeah.
to
The
throughout the
show.
show as to
Yeah.
like how it kind of like
Hmm.
happened differently in
Yeah.
this one compared to Captain America: The First Avenger.
Yeah. Before we get into that, though, do you want to talk about just the Watcher in general? Because like
I
he's
was
kind of.
all
Or were you
right.
gonna
I
start
was
with that?
gonna. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Kels,
Well,
we're on the same wavelength, even though I'm like a zombie sleepwalking right now. So
we are on the same
give us,
wavelength,
just
even
say what you were
though
gonna say.
I was, you know, on another continent, we still managed to stay on the same wavelength.
Yep. Just a simple
So
spud.
this all the episodes start with a narration from this character called the Watcher. He in the beginning he says time, space, reality. Those, you know, he just name drops 3 out of the 6 Infinity Stones. And this particular watcher, I'm not sure if it's him or if it's just a generic watcher, but the watcher, one watcher at least, because they are a group of beings in the comic books, has a name, and this one might be Uatu. That's how
Okay.
I'm choosing to pronounce it. It's spelled Uatu.
Okay.
So that's my best attempt at that. And
Mm.
the Watchers are the oldest beings in the universe. They observe and compile knowledge on all aspects of the universe without interference. And fun fact, they are the beings that Stan Lee is talking
Yep.
to in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2
Yeah.
a few episodes ago when we were talking about Loki and the timekeepers.
Hmm.
I mistook them for the timekeepers. But I wasn't that far off because they ended up coming back anyway, and it's
Hmm.
they in the form of the Watchers.
And it's
Um,
interesting because they're not like they have no influence. Like I really don't think he influences the stories. He just watches. He's like,
he just
what if?
watches.
And
He's
that's
their
the beauty.
narrator.
That's the beauty of the series. Is it's like it's not meant to be like this. Like, oh, how does this fit into the universe? It's just this is a story. All right, on to the next one. And I kind of like that because
Hmm.
it doesn't all have to be connected. And I think that's the one thing that Phase One was kind of beautiful for was that it
Hmm.
didn't need to be connective tissue to everything else that was to come later. Whereas I feel like nowadays it's like Spider-Man Homecoming and Black Panther, like they still end up tying it back. Like it's all about the bigger picture. And that's why I
Right.
like this series just off the bat. So yeah.
So they're actually connected to a main storyline involving the Fantastic Four. I found through my
Oh,
research, and
well,
as we
I
know, the
guess it is
Fantastic
connected then.
Four are coming. Sorry, not to
Fuck.
discredit everything that you just said. I
No,
mean,
that's
this
fine.
could be totally off, but we did get the Fantastic Four logo in that like major, what's
Yeah.
coming next in the MCU video that we got a few months ago. So who knows? Maybe they
Hmm.
are connected. Maybe he is just our narrator
Yeah.
for this
Yeah.
anthology series.
I could see the Watcher being connected, but like I think these actual stories, like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
meant to be just like their own bottles. Like I don't think
No,
it's supposed to
yeah.
be like now in this universe. Peggy is the Captain America or Captain Carter, and then
Mhm.
T'Challa's Star Lord, and they're gonna meet. Like it's not gonna connect those stories together.
Yeah, no. I
Yeah,
don't think so at all.
but
So, basically, what our major differences between Captain America, the First Avenger, and this episode is that the secret Hydra agent that comes in to observe Steve getting the serum and going into the chamber, instead of blowing up the room after he gets in the chamber and having that whole chase sequence with, Steve, he's, getting into his like
hmm.
new superhero body. Eventually, he gets him all that doesn't happen. He decides to blow up the room and cause mayhem before Steve even gets into the chamber. He kills Stanley Tucci's character, the Doctor. He takes out a few others and ends up shooting Steve twice. So that in it doesn't that makes it Steve unable to go into the
Yeah.
chamber and get the serum. So Peggy takes on for the team, gets into the chamber. Howard Stark, flips the switch, and she becomes Captain Carter in that moment. Um, I had like thoughts, but I think I'll just go through like the major like plot things, and then I'll like give my thoughts, I guess.
Yeah.
So instead of the Tesseract being the main thing that they battle for at the end, like we see in Captain America, the first Avenger, I almost said the Winter Soldier. Peggy gets the Dr. Zola and the Tesseract in one scene. In one foul swoop, she collects both because, she's a badass. And Stark uses the Tesseract to build what it is essentially an Iron Man suit called the Hydra Stomper for
Yeah.
Steve, so he can also fight in the war. So Peggy and Steve kind of have this like dynamic duo thing going for them throughout the episode where they're
Hmm.
taking on missions together. Um, when they go to rescue the Howling Commandos, Bucky isn't off somewhere getting experimented on, I guess because they don't have the Tesseract.
Right.
Um, I wasn't sure like why
Yeah.
Bucky wasn't, becoming in the process of becoming the Winter Soldier in this one. I wasn't
Hmm.
sure exactly how that connected, but he's with the rest of the Howling Commandos in the cages. So
Yeah.
Bucky's not in the process of becoming the Winter Soldier in this storyline. Um, and then that cuts to the train sequence. So instead of Bucky being the one who falls to what we assume is his death,
Right.
Steve is the one who ends up falling off the cliff and falling to what they believe to be his death. And so I wrote down, even in this storyline, Steve still somehow ended up in the ice. Regardless of if it's Captain America
Yeah.
the First Avenger or here, he still ended up in the ice.
Mhm.
And then at the end, instead of just fighting Red Skull actually uses the Tesseract. I'm not sure how he got it back. I watched this episode twice, but Red Skull still ended up with the Tesseract. He uses it to open up a portal. As we know, the Tesseract is the space zone. And a bunch of tentacles come out. Excuse me, I just burped and I just talked right through it as if it didn't happen.
I didn't hear it, so it's fine.
I'm so sorry. That was so gross
It's the
and
potatoes. It's the
impolite.
potatoes.
Yeah, it's all
Potatoes.
that Guinness and potatoes that are just
Guinness. Oh, nice. You're
ugh.
not a beer person though,
It's
so like
not good. I didn't like it at all.
it is good. It just wasn't to you. That was
Okay, fine. It's not my preferred beer at all. I like a Blue Moon. That's pretty much the only beer
Blue
that I'll
Moon's
like sip
good.
on
Blue Moon's good.
regularly. Anyway, back to the octopus. So all these tentacles come out. Red Skull is basically his own worst enemy because he gets, devoured just by one of the tentacles. And Peggy has to make the sacrificial play by forcing the octopus back into the portal in which it came. She takes herself with it. But they still have their conversation about the dance. They say, "You owe me a dance." And she goes,
Mhm.
"Yes, Saturday night." But she doesn't say at the store club that she says in
Right.
Captain America, the First Avenger. Um, and yeah, and the episode ends with her like being transported back into the room. It looks like 2012, where Dr. Eric
Selvig.
Selvage
Yeah.
is experimenting on the Tesseract when he's under Loki's control.
Mhm.
It's essentially that room, except it's not, being taken over by Loki yet. It's just a room with Nick Fury and Hawkeye, where he explains to her that the war was ended over 70 years ago.
Yeah.
And
So we
that's
still have that
how
time
it ended.
jump with her coming into the present day. And I think it's
Hmm.
just so interesting that like it kind of plays out the same way. It's just different characters in different roles, but I think
Hmm.
there's something really powerful about the statement that it makes having a woman be the one
Hmm.
who is like the one fighting at that time and being the super soldier and Steve having to be like the sidekick kind of figure. I
Hmm.
like how they keep him skinny too. It's not like,
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, but we have a little bit more serum for you." It's like, "No, he's just like skinny Steve Rogers as he always
Skinny
was."
Steve.
And I always thought it wasn't necessarily fitting the deep booming voice with the skinny Steve Rogers, but in animated form it works a little bit better because it's not this
Yeah.
weird CGI Chris Evans where he's like little puny Benjamin Button like thing. Um,
You know what
yeah,
their relationship kind of reminds me of now that I'm thinking about it?
yeah,
The Shrek, no, the donkey and dragon relationship in the Shrek movies. I'm like, Steve Rogers is donkey, and Captain Carter, is the dragon.
that is a good point. That's good.
I'm
I was
like,
watching
it's just,
Shrek 2 yesterday, so there you go.
because now she's like, now that she has a theorem, she's like, the serum, she's like a lot thicker than him. She's like a foot taller than him now. And I'm like, I just love how like he's still like infatuated by her. Like he still
Yeah.
like, loves her, like even though, she's put on some muscle and is
Well, I don't think it would make her less like muscle's cool. No.
no, I'm saying like in the 1940s like mindset, like a man would
Oh,
be like,
like
"Oh,
girls aren't supposed to look
that's
like
not
that. Okay.
desirable for a dame."
Ah,
Like,
gotcha,
but
gotcha, gotcha.
Steve doesn't care about that stuff. He's like, "Oh my god, it's Peggy and now she can lift me."
Like Dirty Dancing, Steve.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so yeah, the animation style I think is very cool. Like for
Mhm.
off the bat, like I love kind of the color palettes and like the way it looks like almost like a comic book movie, but it has
Mhm.
a little bit more artist. Like it's very interesting artistic choice. It's not like your Pixar bulgy kind of animation like we're seeing with most movies nowadays. It's hand drawn, and I really like that.
Yeah,
The
for sure.
voice cast coming back too is great. I mean, the one major one, of course, is Chris Evans isn't back,
Mhm.
and it kind of shows, I think, a little bit.
Steve is voiced by Josh Keaton and not
Mhm.
Chris Evans.
Yeah,
Which
did you
I'm
did
wondering why, because
it's contractual stuff, I think. It's like you have this
probably.
many films in your contract, and in order to get you for What If, they would need to, like, say, "Okay, and then you also get this amount of movies left," and I think it was just him, Scarlett, and Robert Downey Jr. were like, "Yeah, no."
So in
I
the
have a list of the
upcoming
people who are not coming back if you want.
oh,
Um
I well, I well, I loved. Can I just say I loved
mhm.
Howard Stark in this
Yeah.
in this episode. Going
Mhm.
off what you were saying about the animation style, Dill, is that I loved like the kind of old-timey like TV show feel of it, like that whole aesthetic, like the moment where they're drinking in the bar
Right.
and they almost go in for their first kiss, but then like boom, like Howard Stark's there, and then it kind of just does that like zoom, like circle zoom in on his face. Oh my god,
Yeah.
excuse me, what is going on? I'm
It's
so sorry.
it's the potatoes. You gotta get it out of your system.
This is like so embarrassing. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway,
Yeah.
I loved how they brought back Dominic Cooper to be
Yeah.
Howard Stark, even though they had recasted Howard Stark, obviously, in the rest of the movies that he's
Right.
featured in.
Mhm.
I just thought that he was a great job, and he was a great character because, they had the main antagonist, kind of the Colonel, who didn't appreciate that it was a woman who had gotten the serum. And Howard Stark was just like, no, she can do the job just as good as anyone else, and I needed someone to take the serum, and like Peggy Carter was more than qualified.
Right.
It was very like uncharacteristically like feminist of
Yeah.
I mean, not Tony, Howard Stark, to like take
Mhm.
this stance, and it was
Yeah.
great.
And this is also an opportunity for like characters who didn't get a lot of like meaty stuff to work with in phase one to like kind of rewrite that and be like, Howard Stark, we're gonna give you a little bit more. Just because it's
Mhm.
like you're known for being his dad and kind of not being the best dad. So like
Mhm.
I think that's good that they are giving him opportunities. I did just look up some of the changes we're gonna see in terms of voice casting. So Cap is not the same, obviously. Star Lord is not the same as that was very evident, which we'll get to. Is not the same. Peter Quill, Drax is not the same, and there was some controversy on whether or not Dave Bautista was asked or not. But then I saw him do a Disney Plus commercial the other day, so I don't know what his deal
Mhm.
is. Maybe they're making up for him that way.
Okay.
Black Widow is not the same. Let's see. I think Carol Danvers is not the same. Peter Parker is not the same. They do not have Tom Holland. Ultron is different. Gamora is different. Scarlet Witch is different. Shuri, Pepper Potts, and I believe everyone else is the original voice actor. Or not original, like Mark Ruffalo is instead of Edward Norton, but that's expected.
Mhm.
But I think everyone else is who they are, and I'm looking at this cast. I was like, Natalie Portman's coming back, and we're gonna get like Rachel McAdams for the Doctor Strange one, and Benedict Cumberbatch. So like a lot of them are coming back for this, which is good. But those few that I mentioned are the ones that are not. But I think they knew that Chris Evans not being here would sound a little off to some people, so like they didn't give him a ton to do. Like they gave him a lot to do, but it's more about Peggy, and then we get a lot from Bucky, and like it didn't take me out too much not having him there, but it was
Mhm.
noticeable.
It was, yeah, it took me a second because I was hearing him talk and I was like, "Is that?" And I was like, I feel like it's since I'm questioning it, it's not him, but it
Mhm.
didn't really like take me out of it. I was just, it sounded enough like him and it was animated, so I was
Yeah.
like, I was just along for the ride, but um yeah, I really like Dominic Cooper's performance and his voice
Well,
acting
there you go.
in this.
When
He
we do
kind
our
of
sec
stole it from me.
when we do our second annual Stan Lee Awards, Best Voice Actor, you can campaign for Dominic Cooper.
Yeah,
I-
exactly.
so I also think one of the improvements before we move on to the next episode is the fact that because of the animation style and the nature of the show being that everything is just kind of erased at the end, like it doesn't have any permanence, they can
Mhm.
go bigger in the action and they can take some gutsier risks. I think going forward, knowing what's on the docket to come, aka Avenger Zombies, like we are gonna get some really crazy shit. But
Mhm.
this was a little tamer. We didn't see
Mhm.
too much of like the I have all the power, so I'm just gonna kill off all these characters. Like we didn't see that like we might for future episodes, but I did like
Sure.
the action itself. It seemed like there was even more action in this than there was in the first Avenger. Like I really think because the first Avenger, there's that middle section where it kind of like montages through a lot of like the war stuff, and I think this one it
Mhm.
was like let's have explosions and fights and gunfire and all this stuff, and I like that. I really enjoyed this. I think because it is kind of more or less the same story and events, it's just different characters and different roles. It wasn't as intriguing as even the next one we'll talk about, and what I think some of the other ones are going to be, where it's just like totally different idea of what this story and these group of characters are. And but I did enjoy it a lot. So
Yeah, I think it was. essentially just like a love letter to Peggy Carter, and like
Yeah.
to just give her this epic storyline was great. I
Yeah.
have some like Easter eggy things
Yeah, for sure.
that
And then
I
I have
think.
one question that I'll ask at the end of each episode because I think it's a good question. But go with your
Okay.
Easter eggs. Yes.
So there's a moment during one of the montages that we see Steve Rogers has painted the words "Hello" from Brooklyn on each arm of the
Cool.
Hydra Stomper suit. I looked into the Hydra Stomper to see if it's like a thing that came up in comics or any other storyline at any point, and it was just something that was written for this series. I didn't see anything major with
Gotcha.
that. During the train sequence, Bucky says, "Thanks, you almost ripped my arm off." Which I think was like a nudge, nudge, wink, wink to him, obviously having a metal arm in the MCU that we know and love. There's this great moment where Peggy kind of claps back at the Colonel and says the line that he said to her in the beginning, which is, "Colonel, you're lucky to even be in the room," which I thought was like a great little comeback moment. And then Howard Stark, during the last epic battle, when Howard Stark is like trying to figure out which button to push to kind of close the portal with the octopus coming out of it, but he realizes that all the buttons are in German. He says that he spent a weekend with Heidi Lamar, but she wasn't teaching him German. Now, I obviously, like, I heard a name, I had to look into it. Heidi Lamar was a real actress from the
Mm-hmm.
40s. She was also an inventor.
Ooh.
She was like a scientist as well as an actress, and her like person, it actually inspired a character in on the show Agent Carter. The name of
Cool.
the character is Agent Cully. So she was totally based off of Heidi Lamar. So I just thought that it was cool that they kind of name dropped that character that they totally have used for other projects. I loved
Yeah.
how it came like full circle.
I have a funny story about that actress that it
Heidi
pertains to our
Lamar.
high school experience, but the people at home don't know. So it's like I'll just talk to you afterwards about it.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I referenced that actress in one of the plays we did in high school. My character. So
Front.
what? No, it was
Oh,
Man Who Came to Dinner. So I don't think you were in it,
oh no, I
um,
wasn't in that
but yeah,
one.
I like pull. Well, I guess we'll say it now. My character pulls out like a bra out of his jacket lapels, and he's just like, yeah, this one I copped off a Hedy Lamar, like just holding it up, waving it. So that's just a funny like, oh yeah, I know who that is.
Is that the voice you had to talk in the whole play?
Yeah, it was not that even like that was a tamer voice. It was basically a Gilbert Gottfried impression. So
Oh, okay.
it hurt. I was only in like 20 minutes of the show at the very end, so I got the whole show to just kind of like relax. But that was a fun show. But that just reminded me of that. I was like, oh, nice. So
Oh,
my question is,
okay.
do you prefer this alternate reality, or do you like how it played out originally?
I mean, you know me, I love a good like feminist storyline.
Right.
I just think that yeah, I mean, we saw it in like the 30-minute episode is that with Peggy at the helm of the shield, there's really there's no 2-hour movie you can make of it because she just gets everything done so efficiently. Um Hmm. Do I like? I don't know because I love Captain America.
Right.
I mean,
But if he's in
clearly,
the ice, there's a way he could come back. You know.
I don't know. I love how Steve Rogers becomes Captain America and
Hmm.
his whole arc about being just like the not a perfect soldier but a good man.
I'll give you some options. So it's either
Okay.
this was a vast improvement, this was a horrible take, this was I like this story better, but I still like the original a lot, or while this is an interesting take, I prefer the original. So there's like four. There's a spectrum of four you can go
Well,
on, and I
I
don't think
don't
it's one of the extremes. Yeah,
I don't think it's one of the extremes either.
I'm leaning more
Um,
towards this was an interesting take, but I do still prefer the direction the original went. Just
yes.
because I think there's something about Cap being the one in this new universe that gets frozen, and he's like, yeah, it's tough, but I probably just because I'm used to it. Now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, wait, do I?
Yeah, I'm like, do I just like it because like I'm clouded by like nostalgia and like
Yeah,
bias? Probably. But what I did also realize that at the end of this episode was that, Steve was the one who got to grow old, and not just Steve, but Bucky as well. Bucky
Yeah.
never becomes the Winter Soldier because he never fell off the train and was captured by Hydra.
Hmm.
So I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, do I want to live in a world where Bucky's not the Winter Soldier? I don't think so.
Maybe okay. So I think we're both on the same page, but a good take.
Yeah.
Next
It was a good
episode,
take. It was fun.
what if T'Challa became a Star Lord? And I think first and foremost, before we dive into the actual synopsis and talk about it, this is the last performance ever for Chadwick Boseman.
Hmm.
I'm like getting a little teary talking about it now, but it's like it's sad. It's one of those things where you hear his voice and you're like, oh, Chadwick, and then at the end it gets you with that like in loving memory of our friend Chadwick Boseman,
Hmm.
and that's where it's
Hmm.
like, whew, it like
Yeah.
sinks in, and you're like, I just watched the last performance from this guy because, like, unless they use archival footage, that was the last time he recorded anything before he died. Even after Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which is a great last live action
Hmm.
film to do. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those episodes where I enjoyed it until it set in at the end, and then I was like, whew, I'm emotional. And I think that's why I don't know if I'll revisit this episode too often, but
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear what you thought of this one because this one's, I think, a little bit more like its own thing. Like the last one was kind of like the same story, just different people in different roles, whereas this one's
Yeah.
like kind of a whole new story because of the way one event happened, and now it's a totally different like movie almost or
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
So give us your synopsis, but that was just one thing I wanted to say. It was like it's with a heavy heart, but like we're gonna judge the art for the art, not because of the elephant in the room. So
Right. So when Kraglin and Taserface mistake T'Challa for Peter Quill, the Ravagers take him in and change the fate of the universe.
nice.
So essentially, Dill, what happens is that when exploring to go find Peter Quill for Ego, which was Yondu's original mission, um, they detect so much like power source from all the vibranium in Wakanda that they're like, oh, well, clearly that has to be the kid that's the son of a
Yeah,
planet god guy. So they just scoop up T'Challa when one day when he's outside the borders of Wakanda. Uh, and then Yondu just like takes him aboard. He's like, I want to explore the world. And Yondu's like, why explore the world when you could explore the universe? Like, strap in, kid. Um, yeah, so T'Challa being like the moral compass that he is, kind of just like changes. He really does change the fate of the universe. He
yeah,
changes the fact that the Ravengers aren't just like stealing to get rich for themselves. They steal from the rich and give to the poor. So
Robin Hood.
when
Yep.
T'Challa shows up to get the Power Stone from Morag, the first noticeable difference is obviously, excuse me, the Kree soldier who finds him knows who he is because he has this great reputation following him around that he's this Robin Hood character for, the
Yeah,
galaxy. And instead of taking the Power Stone and, pawning it off to the Collector or taking it to do, keeping it from Yondu for, what happened in the Guardians of the Galaxy, T'Challa suggests you give it to the Krellorians to jumpstart their dying star. And I looked into who the Krellorians were because I wanted to know if we had seen them before, if,
hmm,
they were going to be a major plot point. And they're actually the pink people that we see throughout the galaxy.
okay,
So the
yeah,
assistant who is the assistant to the Collector,
hmm,
Karina, the pink woman,
right,
and the in Guardians of the Galaxy 1 when uh Star Lord has just had like a one night stand with Barit, the girl who kind of climbs out of the chamber and it's
right.
like, what's going on? She is also a Krellorian.
Oh,
So
cool,
those
very
kind of
cool,
like the pinker alien race that you see in the universe, those are the
nice.
Krellorians. Fun fact. Um, yeah, so they detected vibranium, so that's how they found T'Challa. T'Challa, most notably in this episode, we find out that he stopped Thanos.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
that's the big thing to talk about because that
yeah, it
was
is
crazy.
nice guy Thanos in this
Hmm.
episode, and it makes me wildly uncomfortable. I don't know how to feel about
I
this, like,
knew it. I knew it
broy,
would.
chummy Thanos.
As soon as I saw it, I was like, she's gonna be like so uncomfortable by this, and it is uncomfortable at first, but it's also like cool. Like I want to see this other side. It's
Right.
like when
Yeah.
Cable has the turn in Deadpool 2. It's like, and oddly enough, it's Josh Brolin. It's like, what
Mhm.
is it like to see this big tough guy kind of become a little bit of a softie? Um, Yeah, and he has a really nice smile. Like he really does, because he's got that
What?
he's got a big he's got such a big jaw. It's like when he smiles, it's like aw.
Yeah, I guess we
Just-
really don't see Thanos smile ever throughout the
Unless it's
MCU, so like a
like I just
devilish
defeated.
smile,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's like kind of endearing. It's like it's almost like having an old dad around who was like, yeah, I was gonna snap away the universe, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I like that.
So he says T'Challa showed him that there were more ways to save the universe, and everyone's like, "Yeah, well, your plan was basically genocide anyway." And he's like, "Yeah, but it would have been efficient." And it's like, okay, well, you didn't do it, but you still don't
Right.
understand why you shouldn't have done it. So, how
Hmm.
nice of a guy are you, actually, Thanos? Drax is noticeably different in this storyline because he has no family to avenge. His family's alive
Right.
because Ronan never became what Ronan became. So he's just working as a bartender
Right.
and loves T'Challa for saving his family. And as you said before, Drax is voiced by Fred. Oh God, I can't read my handwriting.
Tataskiori.
Taskiori. Thank you so much. He's voiced by him, and not Dave Bautista, which I
Yeah.
thought was interesting because I'm like, how much is Dave Bautista actually worth? Like, he doesn't cost that much money to voice on What If.
Yeah, yes, but yeah, I don't know. He's a
I
busy guy though.
not to be
He's
like
doing a lot of
rude,
stuff. Yeah, yeah, no,
like
he's a busy guy.
I don't
So
know what's going on in Dave Bautista's life. I'm just saying, like, he's definitely not worth what RDJ is worth, is what I'm
right,
saying. Nebula is like totally different. She's not just made of robots because she was never getting trained to death to become Thanos's killing machine. So
right.
she looks like a normal gal. She kind of is giving me Hollywood starlet vibes, and she's getting like pretty flirtatious. She
Yeah.
calls T'Challa Cha Cha. She has this nickname for him. Like, she's
Mm,
like this great, like, femme fatale kind of character.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and the big antagonist in this storyline is the Collector, which actually makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
because he collects things. Like, that's his whole thing. He collects weapons. He collects things of mass destruction. Like,
Hmm.
that's his
I
whole thing.
I liked seeing the Collector as like the big bad here because we didn't really get to see a lot of that in the
Hmm.
MCU. He's just kind of like this little like Weasley guy who works behind the desk, but like this was cool to see him like actually fight. And I think with this
Hmm.
story, because also you have to think like actors' limitations. Sometimes they can't do all the physical stuff, But here it's like the collector can do whatever the fuck he wants because he's animated. So it really just is the voice that has to carry it, which I think is really nice. I love when he puts on the Hela helmet. Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
at first I was like, "What is that?" I was like, "Oh, that's Hela." Gotcha. Yeah, I really like that having that dynamic.
Yeah, same. So instead of working for Thanos, because Thanos never became Thanos, the Black Order is working for the Collector. So Ebony Maw, Proxima Midnight, Proxima Midnight's brother, the other one. They're
Corvus
all
Glaive.
working for the Collector.
That's
You
the one
like
thing
how
I
I
pride
only know
myself
two out
in.
of the four? What
That's
did you
what I
say?
pride myself in is like knowing all four his names.
Knowing
It's
all
great.
their names. All right.
Yes.
All right. So you're a little bit better than me. I get it, Dill.
No, 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 just those ones. I can't name anything else.
Oh, okay.
It's just those because I saw Infinity War like 4 times when it came out, and I was like, okay, I know you all now. We're on a first name basis now.
People, like, when in Infinity War did they even say all the names? Like, I didn't
They
even think
don't
they.
They don't, but because I would like write letterbox reviews. When
Mm,
I write letterbox reviews, I tag like all the actors below, so I can
okay,
like when I see other movies, I can be like, oh, they were in that movie, and that movie, and that movie. So like I would go through the cast list every time I'd write a letterbox review and be like, oh, that's who that is. That is yeah. So
gotcha.
helps with
Uh,
trivia stuff, but that's
so
about it.
Yondu kind of keeps a big secret from T'Challa, as he does Peter Quill. He tells him
Hmm.
that Earth has kind of been destroyed and that his family
Mm,
is all dead. But then T'Challa finds out that his family's actually alive and they're currently still looking for him. And then at the end, after Nebula is revealed to be like a triple agent, and it's all been like a ruse to stop the Collector.
yeah,
Um, we cut to like kind of like a post credit scene moment with Ego finding the real Peter Quill working
yeah.
at a Dairy Queen,
Hmm.
and Peter Quill is not voiced by Chris Pratt. He is voiced by Brian T. Delaney. And you
Yeah.
said that that was very apparent.
That
And
was the most obvious one for me.
I thought that was I thought it was Chris Pratt. I
Really?
didn't.
Oh,
maybe I was just like not paying attention that much in like the first watch through, but I was like, oh shit, like good. They got Chris Pratt to do this one line, like that's awesome. And then I was like, oh my god, it wasn't Chris Pratt. I thought it was like a spot on impression of Chris
okay.
Pratt. I was
May
like,
I
oh
gotta rewatch and see. Maybe I was just like, I don't know, because Kurt Russell is such like that is so distinctly recognizable.
yeah, they
Maybe
got
that's
Kurt
why.
Russell to do one line for this. That was awesome.
I mean, that's easy. Like, hey, can you swing by the studio today and just say like, hey, Pete? Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I guess it's
Yeah.
but I feel like asking someone to just come by to do one thing is a bigger ask than like coming than asking someone to come and do like a day of work.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe he will do more. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. We'll
Well,
see.
apparently, I mean, it's setting it up. Like he said, the Watcher says like that's a story for another time, which
Mm,
means we might get one in like season 2 or something of like what happens with Peter Quill working at Dairy Queen. But
maybe.
it'll be interesting.
Maybe.
Um,
So essentially
yeah,
what we got deal with this storyline is that T'Challa is just a much better person than Peter Quill. So
yeah,
everything he touched essentially turned to gold
mhm.
and everyone's like the literally the fate of the universe was affected like so much differently. Like the 23 movies, if T'Challa was Star-Lord, would not have happened because Thanos never became Thanos and
Right.
like, you know, all that good
Um,
stuff.
a few
So,
people have criticized it for that reason, been like, "Wow,
okay.
this is so anti Star Lord," and it's just because Pratt is now problematic that like we need to
Mm,
now erase Star Lord from. And I'm like, no, it's not anti Star Lord. I think it's more of an homage to T'Challa and who
mhm,
Chadwick is also as a person because they made this before Chadwick passed. So like, this is just it really shows how endearing of a man and how powerful of a person he was. That not even knowing he was on his deathbed basically while in this recording studio, like the fact that like they still focused on the radiation of good that T'Challa serves. I think it's
mhm.
more of a pro T'Challa than it is anti Star Lord. And like I've never been the biggest Star Lord fan, so like I'm fine with it. But like, or Peter Quill, I should say, because now T'Challa is Star Lord. But I haven't been the biggest Peter Quill fan. I've said it on record, but like I don't think this is an anti like Peter Quill. I just think it's like this is such a more interesting take because you have someone so good, and what goodness can really do for the universe, and like just being a good person. Because a lot of these Marvel heroes, save for maybe Cap and Bruce Banner, like the original core, like Iron Man's kind of a snooty, he's a little bit of a dick early on. Like
Mhm,
Thor is selfish sometimes. Like
mhm.
Hawkeye, I mean, whatever. Even Natasha's fine, but also she has her own things with her family. Like she's
Yeah, she has
salty
like a
about some things.
darker
Like
past that she has to
yeah, like
overcome.
I think a lot of and Guardians especially, like they're all misfits, and I think that's why sometimes it is more of a challenge, and sometimes things do fall apart. That's why Infinity War happens the way it does, is because Star Lord can't wait 2 fucking seconds for them to get the glove off of Thanos' hand, and I get it. We don't get
Mhm,
the whole snap and Endgame without it. Yeah, I know why you did it, but it doesn't make it less frustrating. And I think
mhm.
this is just an example of like this is what happens if you just have goodness, and what happens by being good. And T'Challa's just the Paddington of this universe, and I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, and it makes him and you realize it makes him like different from than just like Captain America's just like goodness because they kind of are like the moral compasses for both of
Hmm.
their groups, in this in for argument's sake. But T'Challa is like able to actually like affect people where like Steve is constantly butting heads with Tony. Like he
Hmm.
cannot budge like the people around him. He can only kind of really like just work on himself and like that's why Civil War happens.
Yeah.
But T'Challa, he's able to like rewrite the entire like motive and objective of the Ravagers,
Hmm.
Like he's able to touch people's hearts. He's able to get to the heart of Thanos and tell him that like, hey, maybe don't like commit mass genocide. And he's like, well, it's not genocide if it's random. And they're like, that's not the point.
It's almost like the difference between holding the door open for someone because you have like good like values and you have good manners, and then like holding the door open for someone and asking them how their day is and asking them how they're doing, and like actually like doing more than just that. Like it's
Hmm.
yeah, one is just because you're a good person and you like have good morals and good manners, but then one is like you're actively trying to do good in the world beyond just what you're supposed to do. And I think that's the difference between T'Challa and even Cap. And I love Cap, but it's like T'Challa is just I think this episode really showed just how pure and good he is. Yeah, I just love seeing just the different takes on these characters, like Nebula and the
Yeah.
Collector mostly, just because it's so different. And
Mhm.
Thanos, because it's just like it's so interesting to see these characters in these roles. And I like how it wasn't just Guardians of the Galaxy; it wasn't just T'Challa with Drax, Gamora,
Mhm.
Rocket, and Groot, because you don't need that. And again,
Right, because
Drax,
they would have never have met because the
right?
whole Xandar sequence
hmm
didn't happen.
And
So
that's why I like this episode more, I think, because it's like now we're in a whole nother story. We get to just kind of do our own thing with this. And I hope more episodes are like that. Like this one event happened, so now like it's just a whole nother storyline rather than so this event happened, so now this story is different because these characters are swapped. It's I like the first episode, but this one is really what was like this feels like what the series should be of like what if and like all these different possibilities of what if. And I think that's what I hope the series leans into more. Again, I want a little bit more risk taking in terms of like you now can do whatever you want with these characters. Like you can
mhm.
really get kind of I don't want to say like get bloody and gruesome because that's just not Marvel's nature, but like like take some big swings, like shock us a little bit more. But I
Sure,
do
yeah.
think they think this did a very good job. So
Yeah.
yeah, what do you have any like Easter eggs or anything here?
Yeah. And I was also gonna say, like, I was nervous going into this one because when I saw this premise of the episode and like the trailer for What If, I kind of thought I was like, well, that's really random. Like, how are they gonna like tie that together? Like, how
Right.
would T'Challa end up in space? Like, I don't understand. But then, like, after watching it twice, I really ended up enjoying it a lot. Because
hmm
I really do think like the last one was like a love letter to Peggy, like this one's like a love letter to T'Challa, and like the just the good effect he can have on,
hmm
like, quite literally an entire
Yeah,
universe.
I'm interested to see if Marvel Zombies like who that's a love letter to.
I don't know,
Vision Corpse.
Tony Stark. See, we went in 2 different directions. I said Tony Stark because, like, Tony Stark's corpse, and you said Vision because, like, Vision's corpse.
Yeah, but Vision's
Um,
corpse we actually see like in its
yeah.
rawest form. Poor
Can
guy.
Vision be a zombie if he's just like if he's like a robot? I don't know.
I don't know, but maybe like I don't want to even get. I don't want to theorize because I don't want to be right and then be like, ah. So
Yeah, I gotcha. So some Easter eggs that I noticed throughout the episode at 7 minutes 1 second when T'Challa is running through Wakanda and he's like, he's chasing after the spear he's been throwing. You can see the outline of the Watcher in the stars, kind of looking down at him. There's like
oh
a
yes, yeah.
constellation of him that I noticed. I was like, whoa, that was totally the Watcher. At some point, they mentioned scrolls. I think when they're like talking in the bar, they're like, "Oh, but they're nothing like this. Those dirty old scrolls or whatever."
Right.
Um, Nebula. When Nebula first gets introduced, she's talking about his like her dad Thanos, as we know, to T'Challa, and she's like, "Oh, he's lucky that I even call him the big guy. Like he's not." They obviously have like a little bit of a rocky relationship. Not as rocky as a relationship in the MCU,
Right.
but still not great in this
Right.
episode. And T'Challa says, he gardens now. So he has taken up his retirement plan early since not being a um, master of genocide.
Yeah. But
Um,
he still gardens either way though, and I think that's interesting.
he still has a
he's always
hobby.
he's always had that master chef quality to him.
Exactly. When we meet the collector, we see all kinds of things in his like chambers, including Cosmo, the dog. A dark elf is in a cage, perhaps Malekith himself. Um,
Good name pull. That's hard to come up with on the spot. It's a hard name to remember.
well, I can't forget it because the way you have to pronounce it, Malekith, just like drives me nuts. Um, and Howard the Duck is in this episode.
Yeah, he is.
And he is voiced by Seth Green, a
Yeah,
notable voice actor who
and it's
does all
funny
kinds of
because
great stuff.
I was like, "Wait, is that Seth Green?" And I looked up, was like, "It's Seth Green." And then
Seth
I looked, and
Green.
he did voice him in the other Guardians movies, but we only hear like one line from Howard the Duck in those
Oh
movies. So like,
wow.
I didn't even know that, and I was like, "Wow, okay, Chris Griffin, okay,
I didn't know that at all. Good for
yeah,
Seth Green.
yeah, good for Seth Green.
Um,
Love Seth Green. Love Seth.
when the collector pulls up his kind of like weaponry, his like wall of weaponry, we see that he
Weaponry.
has Mew Mew, Milnor,
Mjolnir.
Mjolnir. I call it Mew Mew just because
It's
I
good.
love quoting Kat Dennings.
Mewtwo.
And he has Cap shield. He has the Captain America shield. And obviously he puts on Hela's crown and he fights with like the blades.
Yeah.
Um and that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
All I
Uh,
have Easter egg wise.
it's just it was a very interesting take. So I'll ask you the same thing. Do you think this is like a vast improvement, a vast embarrassment? Do you think it's like a cool experiment, but I prefer the way it played out in the MCU, or do you think like I like how this played out in the MCU as much as I love, or I love how this played out here as much as I love what they did in the MCU?
You know what? I I think I'm gonna go with the last one you said. I like them equally as much as I
Okay.
liked what happened in the MCU as much as I liked what happened in this
Yeah.
episode. I thought it
I'm
was a very interesting take.
I'm leaning toward I think this is the way I like it to play out more than the MCU because I think you can still get the movie Black Panther
Mm,
if this happens because he can go back to Wakanda and then his dad can die just naturally as an old man opposed to at the UN. You could even
mhm,
have the UN stuff happen. Who knows? And then he takes the mantle of Black Panther, and then Killmonger could come in and say, "Hey, it's mine," and T'Challa could be like, "No, it's mine." But then the thing is, what makes it interesting is that T'Challa now is also kind of an outsider coming into Wakanda for the first time. He
mm,
hasn't been there, so then it's like more of an equal playing field because
mm,
T'Challa and Killmonger have both been separated from Wakanda. Now they're both coming into Wakanda. I think that'd be an interesting take too, because now it's like you don't have any rights as someone who's been here forever because you just got here too. You were with the Ravagers the whole time, and now you're just back in Wakanda and you can just take the throne. Well, guess what? I want the throne too. I think that could create an interesting dynamic. So I think honestly, I like how this plays out because I think in this scenario, Yondu doesn't die, and Thanos is pretty good. The only thing we don't get is like Gamora and stuff. But maybe in some
mhm,
other universe, like Peter Quill will still end up with Gamora. Because I don't want T'Challa and Gamora. I want T'Challa with Nakia. So I really think this is. I really like this, and I think if the MCU went in this direction instead, I think it would be just as good.
mm,
Obviously, you don't get Thanos and the snap and all that, but you could have another
right.
big bad. You can have Mephisto instead of Thanos, who's collecting Infinity Stones, and it's different, and has a different motive.
Do you think
Um,
there's gonna be a what if episode where it's like Mephisto is at the center of it because they were like they saw how badly we were all freaking out about him in
I don't know.
WandaVision, and they were
Only
like,
well, and because it's what if, it means you can cast any voice actor because they don't have to. There's no physical demand. So like, I'd love to see like Morgan Freeman as like Mephisto. She's like, I've got you now, and it's like, whoa, Morgan Freeman. Um,
yeah,
yeah, great episode overall. Again, the voice acting is great. Karen Gillan coming back, so good. I mean,
mm-hmm,
Chadwick, of course, beautiful. I mean, he has, I think, the most distinct voice in the MCU. I'm trying to think like RDJ maybe, but we're gonna see someone take hum of his voice next week. But yeah, I really don't see anyone as iconic of a voice in the MCU as Chadwick at this point.
mm-hmm,
But who knows? I can't think of any right now. Maybe Loki, but even then, it's like I feel like someone could do a good Loki impression, but it's like T'Challa is just so its own
mm-hmm,
thing.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so that's What If episodes 1 and 2. We liked it. We're good. We're happy with it. I am only more excited to see what comes later because I think this was kind of easing us in, and I think we're really gonna
Mm-hmm,
get wild and wacky. I hope.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, and then on the schedule for the next few weeks, we got What If, but we've also got Shang-Chi coming. So
mm-hmm,
I'm trying to think. I think 2 episodes from now. So this week you're getting 1 and 2. Next week you'll get episode 3. The week after you'll get Shang-Chi, and then the week after that we'll do the 2 episodes of What If together, opposed to doing 2 episodes of Marvelous Movie Mondays like we did with Loki, because Loki was so much to talk about with
mm-hmm,
Black Widow. We did 2 separate episodes. I think this one we'll just do a Shang-Chi episode, and then the next week we'll do whatever we missed for What If, and then the next What If. I think that's just the easy way to do it because we're under an hour and we were able to fit in 2 episodes. So, um, Kelsey, any last thoughts on What If before we plug our social needs?
no, you pretty much said it all. I'm excited for what's to come, Dill.
Cool. So what if the audience wanted to find you on social media, Kels? Where would they go?
Oh, I see what you did there. You
That
could
was that was
find
good.
me on Instagram at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick. You could follow me on TikTok at Cause13, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Cause Productions. You can see all about my Ireland adventures if you're at all interested in going to Ireland or and you want to know what to expect there.
Mhm.
You can watch that video.
It's basically like a 20-minute montage of just different potatoes Kelsey ate. As
Yeah.
yeah, that's all it is.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, no, we don't hear anything else about like the lavish green scenery or anything like that. It's just the potatoes. What was the best potato dish you had?
Ooh, okay.
Ooh, good question. Who cares about what if? This is the juicy stuff we want to get to.
I had some, well, as we know, their French fries there are called chips, so I had quite a good amount of, like, chips
And what are chips
there.
called?
Chips are called
Crisps.
crisps. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So, potato dish? I would have to say I had a really good, maybe it was because I was drunk, they hit different, but we went to a pub one night and they handed out just like free baskets of chips and they were just so good. They were so yummy. They were like fried perfectly. They weren't too greasy, weren't too salty. They
Yeah,
were perfect. So
yeah. Maybe they were
that had
air
to be the
fried.
best potato I
I
had.
love I love air frying potatoes now. Like that's my way to go because it's not as greasy, but you still
Yeah.
get the flavor and the crunch. Oh,
Yeah, totally.
so good. Yeah, I've been laying off of carbs, but I might have to go eat potatoes now. So, I'm actually going to the Yankee game, so I'm gonna actually stuff my face with French fries now, which is
Yeah.
great. Or sorry, chips, French chips. Um, but yeah, you can find me at Dylan_Randazzo, Twitter and Letterboxd. I didn't put that on there, but follow me on Letterboxd 'cause I'm doing reviews there. TikTok at Dylan_Randazzo417 and the Dill Pickle Movie Network. That's where you're seeing this. If you're watching on video, if you're listening on audio, give us a 5-star review. If you feel like we have that we're less than 5 stars, let us know what we could do better, but still give us a 5-star review because it helps. And then subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts. It's probably there. It should be because I sign up for all of them. But check us out on YouTube too to see our faces or see Kelsey's and block out mine because mine is very groggy this morning, but it's okay. We do what we do to give you the content you deserve, and that's all on that. See y'all next week with What If Episode 3, which I don't even know what the name of it is, so it'll be What If Something.